Let the Right One In from 2008 is a Swedish horror drama by Thomas Alfredson. Made at estimated $4.5 million, 11 million worldwide, and received rightly mostly positive reviews. Considered one of the best modern vampire movies ever. There is a 2010 US remake and a short-lived 2022 US TV series with 10 one-hour episodes. It is based on John Lindquist's same-named 2004 novel, who also wrote the screenplay. In 1982, 12-year-old Oscar lives with his divorced mother. His father is an alcoholic and lives in the countryside in wintry Stockholm. He is intensely bullied by his schoolmates, against whom he secretly harbors murderous revenge fantasies. He also collects articles about murderous and violent crimes. One night, an older man moves into the apartment next door with a young girl, Ellie, who, according to her, is about 12. The children become friends, and the introverted Oscar quickly falls in love with a strange person, which turns out to be a vampire, and the older man is actually her protector, who procures the blood Ellie needs by committing murders. Oscar asks her if she wants to be with him and gradually gains her trust. When Ellie realizes that he is being bullied by his schoolmates, she encourages him to fight back, which he then does. Meanwhile, her helper's hunting expeditions are unsuccessful, whereupon, out of hunger, she attacks someone and remorsefully kills him to prevent his transformation into a vampire, which body is found in the ice by Oscar's schoolmates on the day he finally fights back. After another failed attempt by the elderly man, he disfigures himself with acid to protect Ellie, and after a visit by her in the hospital, falls out of the window to his death. The fittingly eerie score is by John Söderqvist. The original novel title is attributed to Let the Right One Slip In by Morrissey.
Let the right one in, let the old dreams die.
Movie and book are both very good, with very similar but not identical plots. Ellie is basically good and only kills because she has to, while Oscar develops a dark side which leads Ellie to him and wants to kill but can't yet, which uses some elements from vampire stories, like Ellie's inability to tolerate daylight, infecting people through a bite. She can only enter a home safely if she is explicitly invited in, and I prefer, as with Interview with a Vampire, the more accessible and, in my opinion, somewhat more subtle, excellent adaptation, which benefits from the two children in the lead who carry the whole movie, and a brilliant staging. In the original, Ellie, or rather Elias, is a boy who was castrated 200 years ago by a sadistic vampire nobleman. The adaptation doesn't elaborate on Ellie's gender and presents the character primarily as female. However, there are, upon careful observation, some clues that she, as she says, is not a girl, such as her in the original afterwards deeper dubbed voice, which was supposed to be explained in more detail in flashbacks, but these scenes were ultimately cut. But for a second you can see a surgical scar, which isn't further discussed. In the much more detailed, significantly more brutal, also dealing with prostitution and drugs novel with more characters such as Tommy, a 16-year-old neighborhood friend, Oscar, like Tommy, commits small thefts. Ellie has also more obvious vampire traits. He can transform his hands and feet into real claws and extend the skin under his arms to fly. Ellie's initial protector, in the original a former school teacher, is also a pedophile and wanted murderer who has a much bigger part in the story. After falling out of the window, mistaken for death, he returns as a mutated vampire monster, ultimately killed by Tommy.
Wake up, it's time to go.
A priestess smiled, angel of file, last act of the show.
2010 came with Let Me In, a UK-US remake by the, after a 20-year hiatus, in 2007 reanimated Hammer Studios. See also the Hammer special, with different names, Owen and Abby, and a new cast, who thanks to the poor script and lousy direction never come even close to their predecessors. And superficially the same plot, with some of the same scenes and settings.
Can you hear them coming? A keys ring across the floor. Don't worry about tomorrow, cause you know what they came for.
But in reality just a lazy knockoff, which typical of Matt Reeves, who also shat out the script, as with his Planet of the Apes and the Batman remakes, wants to appear deeper than it actually is, with scenes supposedly from the novel, like with Owen's candy obsession, which he buys here and not steals like in the book. It's set in the US in 1983. There are constant reminders on TV and countless 80s tracks, and begins with the hospital admission and the death of the protector, which makes the chatty police threatening bedside speech irrelevant, and of course also removes any suspense from the following flashback of the events so far. Which is why I prefer the cold and more realistic original, which is better in every way. And also, except for the Catman scene, which is missing here, does without overly obvious CGI crap.
And here we go.
When Owen offers her blood brotherhood, he sees Abby's true self for the first time.
Two capsules sent to heaven, and now it's time to follow. You don't know, they should have known that bullet's hard to swallow.
To resist the urge to bite him, she attacks a neighbor instead.
One last wish is granted, a kind of last romance. Lock your soul, take off your shoes, and then you start a dance.
But can't kill her in time, which is why she also becomes a vampire. And she later dies in the hospital when sunlight hits the room.
So here we go.
Let Me In made on a $20 million budget only $27 million worldwide back, making it a flop, but received consistently positive feedback and is considered among the usual clueless idiots one of the better remakes. The soulless adaptation is like the Explanator 5000, treating the viewer like a stupid child. With a bit more action, they are missing the guessing of the victims, but instead we get Trash Bag Man and a few other minor characters, like an annoying cop. And we learn almost nothing about the now one-dimensional neighbors, actually much more present and important part of the plot, or the in the original loving parents. But here they are the exact opposite, with barely any scenes. The mother is a religious alcoholic and the father's voice is only heard once on the phone. There are no clues about Abby's true gender. She's a girl here, which makes her whole I'm neither a boy nor a girl thing pretty pointless. She also shows no remorse after killing, appearing cold and calculating, and is constantly the active one in her contact with Owen, who shows no morbid joy in the suffering of others, quite the opposite, doesn't collect violent items either, and is merely a victim of circumstance, not an upcoming perpetrator. His character practically develops backwards from the original here. He reacts more and more sensitively to the violence, which is why in this version it makes absolutely no sense for him to leave with Abby at the end. They have nothing in common. To make matters even worse, Abby met or recruited her older protector as a child, which makes her a manipulative antagonist, and the whole outsider friend love story completely unbelievable. At the end, Abby confesses to Owen that she's a vampire. After he secretly spends the night at her place, the investigating police officer, in the original the best friend of the first and last victim, who committed in the book suicide to protect him from herself, breaks into the apartment and gets killed, after which Abby leaves town. When Owen's tormentors ambush him and begin drowning him, she returns to save Owen. Sometime later, he leaves the city by train and hides Abby in a large suitcase. In 2011, the same author published a sequel in the form of an epilogue, the short story Let the Old Dreams Die, which describes how Ellie turns Oscar during the train ride into a vampire, so they can be together forever. Lindquist explained that he also considers this the true ending of both film adaptations. Sure.
Someone's gonna miss you, flowers on your grave. Dance your soul out of your body, smile brother, be brave. 5 steps to the gallows in the direct slide to hell. Enjoy your last steps in the light before you leave the cell. And here we go. Yeah!
The remake movie is still Citizen Kane and high art compared to the remake series. Here a single father and his daughter Eleanor, who became a vampire 10 years ago at the age of 12, are on the run searching for a cure, until they finally settle in New York, where Ellie befriends 12-year-old Isaiah, whose divorced police officer mom just happens to be investigating a recent series of murders involving disfigured victims, while her father, who just happens to murder Isaiah's father to feed his daughter, is looking for the distributor of a drug that apparently gives people vampire-like traits. At the same time, a terminally ill scientist hands over responsibility for the search for a vampire cure for his teenage son to his scientist daughter, who previously thought her brother died in a hunting accident 10 years ago. It also turns out that he is financing his research with the sale of that drug that plays a role in the series of murders, which then brings everyone together at the cliffhanger ending for season 2, which thanks God never got made, otherwise I would have had to suffer through that too. The completely uninteresting run-of-the-mill story shamelessly uses the book's title, since otherwise no one would give a fuck about this ultra-woke DEI parade. So ridiculously artificially diverse, it almost seems like a satire. The women here are usually the moral, good or qualified ones. And superiors, of course. Detective, scientist, chef, who constantly talk down to the men except when they tell the women how awesome they are or boss them around. Since the men are mostly incompetent idiots, wimps, losers or downright villains. This unbearably talkative, painfully boring crap where you don't give a fuck about any character, but especially not about the two uninteresting kids, has except for a few blatantly stolen names and scenes, most of which now make no sense, absolutely nothing to do with the novel or the movies.
Here we go.
It's mainly about the, of course, futile search of the stupid cure. And was created without any involvement from the author, who got fucked over twice here. In an interview from the same year, he explained that Hammer misled him about the nature of the contract, which is why he inadvertently sold all the rights to the book for just 1 Swedish krona, that's less than 10 cents, thereby receiving not even 1 cent in royalties from this garbage.